Welcome to In the News for the first episode of 2024. It is January 5th, 2024. I am Brett Birdie from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
Happy New Year, Jeff.
Indeed.
I can't believe 2024. It's like we just talked about a week ago or so. But that was last year, and now it is 2024. And right out of the gate here, you are linking to, again, one of our favorite Mac-focused journalists, Jason Snell. And he, of course, had to do some predictions for 2024. What is Apple gonna be up to in 2024? Some of these I thought were great. You know, Jason just always has such a balanced approach to this, right? It's like we all like to think about what's the cool new things, and so does Jason, of course. But he balances it out with like, yeah, we may not see a watch, but they're working on it, right? That kind of a thing. Good article here.
I would tell you, Brett, in light of this article and a couple other I've seen since it, I am as excited about what Apple and related companies are coming out in 2024
right?
as I have been in literally, certainly since we started the podcast, and you know, even going all the way back. Because on the one hand, you have the Apple Vision Pro coming out, which is a completely new platform. And I know it's going to be expensive,
right?
And I know that not many people will have it at first, but it is Apple going to something completely different. And what I put on my post today is I said it was the Apple's first platform since the iPad in 2010. And I realized that the watch came out in 2015. But, you know, and the watch is a platform, but we all know that there's not a lot for third-party apps on the watch and stuff. But, and I love my watch, don't get me wrong. But this Vision Pro is something completely different. And I really think it's as much of a brand new open palette as the iPad was. We don't know where this is going to go. It just fascinates me. And I do think that in the long-term future, we'll look back and say, yes, this was, you know, a huge change. So that alone is going to make 2024 exciting. But on top of that, we've talked about how the fact that there was no iPads in 2023. So something's going to come out in 2024. We've also talked in the past. I mean, you and I are always talking about artificial intelligence and how it's just doing so many incredible things. And we haven't seen a ton from Apple in 2023, but they keep saying in interviews and stuff, you know, we're working on it. It's in these other things. You know, are we going to see AI in Siri in 2024 or some other way? I think there's nothing but possibilities. And even if it's not from Apple, from other companies that are working in, whether it's the AI sphere or other spheres, but that are Apple adjacent and that have an effect on the things that you and I use every day, Brett, I could not be more excited. There's just so much that's going to be going on this year. You know, that's on top of, you know, perhaps new AirPods and new iPhones and everything else, and you know, HomePod, who knows what else. So it's an exciting time. It is.
I've been taking a fairly kind of a balanced approach to the Apple Vision. I'm excited about it, just like anything. It's gleaming. It's beautiful. I'm excited to see it. But I think the more that you and I have talked about this, and the more I've seen people talking about it, it's going to be a great thing. And even Jason here says, you know, there's only going to be so many that are going to be available in 2024, right? This is not going to be something that you're going to walk into the Apple store, you know, just the average Joe off the street, certainly not me, and purchase. But I'm starting to see that it's just a bigger picture here, right? I mean, I think Jason mentions in here, especially for the iPhones, which we're really not anticipating a whole lot of bumps in the iPhone side. You know, better cameras, of course, and, you know, faster processors possibly, and maybe a little bit lighter. But on the camera side specifically, that the iPhone cameras may be embracing sort of the spatial video, right? Or the spatial pictures, that kind of a thing. And I guess that just gets me a little bit more excited, is that it's not just like it's a new product of the Apple Vision just for the sake of it being a product, but it seems like I think Apple is kind of building something around it, or they're going to maybe incorporate some of these other things into it. And this isn't like it's brand new for Apple to do something like this. But I think I'm just kind of getting excited though, because it's just like you said, I'm getting excited, or getting on your excitement train. And just the sense is like, wow, we could really be interacting with information a little bit differently. Maybe the way that I kind of started thinking about interacting with information with the iPad, like I was able to touch the internet browser, or even with the original iPhone, right? We had touchscreens before, but it wasn't anything specific to what it was when it actually came out.
Yeah, Brett, you are so on point. As you just said, with the iPad, when you're finally the ability to touch the picture and touch things just changes the way that you work with it. And Vision Pro, I think, could be the same. And let me just give you some specific examples. The idea of these I think it's called spatial videos. It's like a 3D
Yes.
video that you take
Right.
with you either take it with the Vision Pro, or more likely you take it with your iPhone or something like that, and you later view it again. People are saying that when you see a home movie, people that you know and love, your friends and family, in 3D, it allows you to relive a memory in a way you've never done it before.
Yes.
People say that
Right.
when you look at panoramic photos that you may have taken of, who knows, the Grand Canyon or something really cool years and years and years ago, when you can look at it in this 3D environment, it's so immersive. And I'll give you one last example. For Christmas this year, my son, one of the things that we gave him was the Meta Quest 3, which is their
Oh,
newest
yes.
headset.
Right.
And
Right.
the other day, literally just the other day, I was about to go to work, and my son hadn't started school yet, and so he says, "Dad, you got to come see this." And so I sat down at my computer study. He was sitting in front of my home computer, which is a Mac Mini with a big 27-inch display, and he's like, "I want you to just sit here and put on the MetaQuest." So I put on the headset, and he had it
Okay.
hooked up to my computer through a USB-C cord, and suddenly, in my Mac's screen, the 27-inch screen, pretty big. I was seeing the Mac screen in the MetaQuest, so like in a 3D world, and it looked like it was like a 60-inch TV,
Ooh.
but it was the same. It was my Mac's desktop, and then on top of it, there was another desktop, and to the left, there was another desktop. He had basically
What?
hooked up three virtual monitors to my Mac, and they were all running different things. Now, I'll tell you the
Okay.
quality. The pixel quality, it was a little blurry, and in all honesty, I mean, I could look at, at the top of the Mac screen, it's like file, edit, view. I know what those are because of course you've
Sure.
seen them in your entire life, but they were a little blurry. And this is of course the difference between the Quest and the
Yeah.
Apple Vision
Yeah.
product, which is going to be a lot more expensive, but it's going to be a lot crisper and stuff. But as I just sat there and I looked around, I thought, this is transformative. This is something completely new. And it, whether I'm using my literal Mac or my iPad in some virtual world that's around me, or just otherwise interacting with elements. I mean, it's a complete, just like touching
Yeah.
an iPad
Yeah.
screen was something completely new. This was something completely new, and that was the moment when I was like, thank you for showing me this,
Yes.
because this just gives me a
Now you know.
preview into
Right.
what we could be doing. So that's the reason why I'm excited. And again, is it going to be a flop? Who knows? Maybe nobody will
Who know?
buy it.
Right.
Maybe it'll be a flop, and it'll be something like, well, we all thought that would be cool, but they are pushing the envelope and doing something
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
interesting. And gosh, I cannot wait to find out what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you got me sold. I mean, I'd like to use your son's Meta as well, but I'll just have to wait, I guess, until I can finally get the Vision Pro. And then just quickly, a couple of things that Jason underscores here that we've talked about before. The iPads might finally kind of, I don't know,
Yep.
get a little balanced or kind of synthesize themselves a little bit better into a line that makes a little more sense right now. It's a little confusing. You and I get this question all the time, like, which iPad do I buy? And I'm like, well, there's so many on there. And then he talks a little bit about, the Macs. Obviously, they might get a bump. Everything, the MacBook Airs might come up to an M3 as well, which I still don't think is absolutely necessary. But anyway, just some other little tiny things that Jason, I thought, did a good job in here and covering on that as well.
Cool stuff.
Well, speaking of the Apple Watch, Jeff, here is another article that you linked to, which is a review of the Apple Watch Series 9, which I think you and I have kind of concluded this because neither of us bought a Series 9, by the way. But this is Wesley Hilliard in AppleInsider. He's like, well, if the only reason that you want it is for the double tap, you might not necessarily need it. I thought this was a good review here, too.
Yeah. When new Apple products come out, of course, I love reading those reviews in that first week. But what I like just as much is when people say, now that I've been using a product for 3 months, for 6 months, here's my views, because it allows you to get a lot more perspective. And so this was an interesting, because he's been using the Apple Watch Series 9 for 3 months. And of course, it's been in the news lately because it was, momentarily Apple couldn't sell them, and then they could sell them, and may change again in January. So we're all thinking about the Series 9. But the real question is the Series 9 worth upgrading to if you already have an Apple Watch? And I have the Apple Watch version 7, and I decided not to make this upgrade because although there were some new features added in the 8 and even more in the 9, for me it wasn't quite enough. But the biggest new feature was, like you just said, this double touch feature that you can see what's on your watch, and you can tap your fingers together to select a default option, which is cool. And so that's why I was interested to see this review where he says it does work, but sometimes it doesn't work. And it's not such a in the times that it does work, it's not such a transformative new thing that like you want to rush out and get this. So, again, I'm glad that Apple has the feature. And whenever I upgrade, which who knows, might be this year, if Apple comes out with an Apple Watch version 10 that's really cool,
right?
Then maybe it'll be time for me to upgrade. And I will probably appreciate having this as yet another feature. But it's always nice when people give you this perspective of saying, yeah, it's interesting, but like it's not so good that this is a reason to upgrade. I think that's really helpful advice.
I like where he said, first of all, double tap is not a brand new feature, right? This was a little confusing. Some people have asked me about this, and I'm sure they've asked you about it as well. It has been in the Apple Watches as an accessibility feature for a while, but it didn't work quite as good as what we saw.
It's much more bigger feature now.
In the Series 9, and by the way, the Apple Ultra Watch 2 that came out. So I have an Apple Ultra Watch 1, and similar to what you just were talking about, Jeff, I did not see the insane need to upgrade to an Ultra Watch 2 other than the fact that I was thinking about it, a couple of weeks ago when there's like, hey, they're not going to sell it anymore. Should I get one, just to say that I have one? I ended up not doing that. But to your point also quickly, I got my daughter an Apple Watch over Christmas, and we actually got her a Series 8 because, Jeff, I felt like that. First of all, it was a little bit less expensive, right? And I'm like, I just don't think that she doesn't need the fastest and greatest. But, the biggest thing was it was a little faster, and the double tap was there. And I'm like, yeah, I just don't think that's quite enough to bring it up there. But anyway, it is good. Yeah, I'm glad to see this. And I'm glad the Series 9 is out. And, man, I would love to see something this year, although Jason Snell just in that last article was talking about he doesn't think anything brand new is going to come out Apple Watch wise, even though this might be the 10th anniversary of it. Although didn't he say it's the 10th anniversary of the announcement, but not the 10th anniversary of it going on sale? So Anyway, we'll see it's not going away. We know that Apple's working on it, and I would definitely see either this year or next year that we'll see maybe even a little bit of a redesign. And anyway, I'm excited about that as well. Jeff, you and I have been doing this long enough that we remember the old BlackBerries. And one of my first, quote, smartphones was the Palm Treo 650. Who's out there? Who's with me on this? Oh, my goodness. You pulled it out of your desk, for crying out loud. Okay. The one big feature, and I remember this, and so do you, Jeff. The one big feature when people were going from these older devices into the newer devices with bigger screens was, what's going to happen to my hardware keyboard? And we've, I think, made the transition okay over the last several years until you linked to this story today. I don't know whether to like you for this or to hate you for this, because it's like I might have to get one of these. John Gruber and Darian Fireball wrote about a new Clicks device. Very interesting.
Yeah. The first time I saw this link on the internet, which I think was just yesterday, my first reaction, Brett, was this is ridiculous. I'm not going to even I'm not going to even link to it on iPhone JD. And then I saw two more people talk about it, and I'm like, why are people talking about it? And then I saw the John Gruber post that you're showing right now, where he was so excited about it that I think he's already ordered one. There might be, I don't know. I still don't think it's for me, but I do know that people did used to like to type on the little keyboard because it's tactile and you can feel it. Of course, they're little chiclet type keys. They're so tiny, but I think it's fascinating that this product is coming out. And so it looks like an iPhone case. It completely covers your entire iPhone, which means, of course, that it is the size of your iPhone. So if you get one for your iPhone 15 Pro, and then this fall, you get a new iPhone that's a different size, it's not going to work with it. So just keep that in mind, that it's going to be limited to this one model you have. And what it does is, but it's smart. It doesn't, instead of using Bluetooth to communicate with the iPhone, and Bluetooth, when you communicate a lot, wears down the battery, it actually just plugs into the USB-C port or a Lightning port if you have an iPhone 14 Pro. And so it uses basically no power at all. And it gives you a little keyboard that can even light up if you want at the bottom. So it makes your iPhone really long, as you can see from the pictures you're showing up on the screen, because it's your entire length of your iPhone plus space for 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of keys. So But you know what? It's
incredible.
Interesting. And I love the idea that, not everybody needs to have it, but for those people that really think that that they would like to have the buttons again, like the old BlackBerry or the old Palm Trio, it's great that it's an option. How much is it? I want to say it's like $150 or something like that.
I was trying to see what they're pricing.
I forget. There you go. 140 or 160,
right.
Around 150, depending on what model you get. And they've got some different colors and stuff like that.
Bumblebee yellow.
I really look forward to seeing the reviews from people that use it, because I will tell you, if the reviews are really positive and people are like, this is great, I love it, I will admit that I don't use an external keyboard with my iPhone very often. But you know what? I literally just used it last night. Just last night, Brett. I was at home and I wanted to type a work related email, and I didn't have my iPad with me. And on my iPhone, I was right there in front of my computer, and I could have connected to my work, but I got to go through all sorts of levels of security. I'm like, I'm just going to type this on my iPhone. So I use this little app I have on my computer that I can't remember the name of it right now, but it allows the keyboard on my Mac to type on my iPhone. And I've recommended it in the past on this podcast. And so I did that, and I just wrote my message real quick using a keyboard. Now that was a full-size keyboard, not a little chiclet keyboard. But there are times when you want to have something besides the on-screen software keyboard. So I really do get it. I really do.
I don't know if it's just my age, Jeff, or if it's just that I am not as coordinated, but I still, after all these years, do find that I am not that speedy with the on-screen keyboard, or I just get frustrated because I routinely will make some kind of a typo or a mistake. And it's like, I've either got to hit the backspace button and go all the way back and clear it out, or I have to hold the space bar down, to move the cursor around and to make the changes. And there are times when I just want to get something out quickly. And I know there's a lot of people screaming at the radio right now, at the patio, and they're saying, yes, that's why I liked my hardware keyboards. When I first saw this link to it, I started laughing just because of all of the history that we have with hardware keyboards. But then I started thinking, I think I'd like to try that. I would love to compare and see what the speeds are. And I don't know. I mean, they've really done a beautiful job on this website. They have some of the most lovely models that are showing this keyboard here. But I'm saying I would really like to see it. So yeah, I appreciate you linking to that, because even though at first I thought this was just hilarious, I want to know what people are thinking. I want to know. I mean, it has all of the buttons. It even has a tab button on there, for crying out loud, and a command button on there. And it has the Siri microphone. That's all the stuff I really want to have if I'm typing something on my iPhone. Certainly if I'm doing some kind of a document work like what you were talking about.
One thing that we should mention, and I don't even know if you know this yet, Brett, but the people behind this company, these are actually good people. One of the guys is a guy the guy who's showing right now. I forget his name. Who's got a name on YouTube.
Mr. Mobile.
Mr. Mobile. He does tons of reviews. He got together with a guy. I just know his people call him Crackberry Kevin.
That's right.
He wrote that Crackberry was a website that existed for many. It was the BlackBerry website.
Here he is.
So there you go. And I forget what Kevin's last name is. Kevin truly knows everything BlackBerry. And they also hooked up with people that used to work for the hardware design at BlackBerry, people that used to work at Apple. I mean, they put together what looks to be like an all-star team to come out with this product. So whether or not this product makes sense, this is probably the best version of this product that it could be. Again, still will leave to be determined whether it actually makes enough sense to be worth it. But this looks like the real deal. So.
Well, thanks. I had not seen this, and so anyway, it was just great to see this morning. Wake up this morning and be like, that's interesting. Speaking of buttons, how about the shortcut button on the iPhone 15 Pro? We've talked about this. This is one of the first things I remember when you first got your phone. It was live on air, I believe, and that we were talking about what does that shortcut button look like? Because before that, it was that little clicker back and forth, right? That would only mute your phone. Well, now with this shortcut, you can assign different things to the shortcut button. I got to admit, I've just left mine at the default, which is the shortcut button is the mute my phone, right? Or just silence my phone. And I haven't really changed that or done much. I know other people have made it to you can do a flashlight or you can turn the camera on. I know we've talked about stories where people are doing that. But one of the interesting things that I remember you mentioned early on as well is that you can assign a shortcut to that shortcut button that could launch all kinds of stuff on your phone. So this was a good article that you linked to today as well.
Yeah. Now remember, right now the action button is only on the iPhone 15 Pro. So you have to have the newest and the most expensive iPhone. But I presume that in future models, Apple will continue. So eventually more and more of us will have these action buttons. And there's nothing wrong, Brett. If you want to keep the action button on the remote on the default setting, great. But I do hope that people take a look at this article, because it would hopefully inspire you to consider alternatives. Because when you have the action button trigger a shortcut that you create, it literally means that there are infinite things it can do.
Yes.
It's just depending upon what's best for you. And I may have mentioned this before, but the way that I have mine set up right now is during the day, like right now, if I was to hold it down, it's going to jump me into the camera. So I can very quickly start taking a photo or video. And I find that useful. But after, I want to say it's after 9 o'clock at night, I have mine turn off a lamp in my bedroom. My wife always goes to sleep before I do, and she always leaves a lamp on for me. And just every single night of my life, I'm always turning off that lamp. And because it's a HomeKit controlled lamp, I used to have to like go and open up my iPhone and go to HomeKit and find the lamp and then put the, but whereas now, when my iPhone's always in my hand as I'm going to bed, I just hold down that button and it turns off the lamp. Now that may see, if you don't live my life, the life of Jeff Richardson, you may see having a button dedicated to turning off your lamp seems silly, but that is exactly my point. Whatever is important for your specific light, whether it's a specific light in your house, maybe you want to make it that turns off all the downstairs lights, or maybe it has nothing to do with lights. Maybe you want to have it like, I'm a sort of person that's always writing a new note, and I want a single button that will start writing a new note, or I want a single button that's going to start playing a song, or a single button that's going to do whatever it is. Maybe for you want a single button that plays the sad trombone sign, trombone sign, whatever is specific to your life. No judgment here, but you get to pick that one thing that you do a lot, and you want to have one button access to it. That's what I love. And so that's why I love this post, because it encourages you to find something that's specific to you, that really matters to you, and assign the function to it.
I should correct myself. I've been calling it the shortcut button, and it's actually called the action button.
The action button, yeah.
And so in settings, and by the way, a lot of this we're talking about is sort of over and above kind of the built-in options here. If you go into your settings in the iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max, you will find an action button setting. And first of all, I think this is one of the most prettiest integrations of a setting that Apple has come up with. Because you can say it has this beautiful little pictures here of like, you can turn it to silent mode, you can say a focus mode, you can say camera. In other words, there's maybe about 7 or 8 built-in things that you can assign to the action button, including translate, or this is the magnifier, for example. And then the last two, by the way, I didn't recognize this, but the last two, first of all, you can quickly use an accessibility feature, and you can choose which feature that comes on. And then, of course, the last one is what we're just talking about. You can assign a shortcut to the action button on there. Just really nifty. So there's already some built-in options for assigning that action button on your phone. But then if you want to go over and above, exactly, I think the way you presented it, Jeff, is great. And you're right. Like, it can be something specific to each person that makes sense. And I liked your idea on top of that to put it on a schedule. So it's like after a certain time, it does something different. Is that built in? I just have a shortcut. So my shortcut says that
when this shortcut is triggered, if the time is before a certain time, do X, and if it's after a certain time, do Y. And just in case you're curious, the time that it takes it to figure out what time of day it is, it's like a fraction of a second. So the action button is not any slower, just because I have it do different things depending upon the time of day.
Well done, my friend. I like that. Boy, that's just like adding layers on top of all of that. That's great. Last week, you linked to a video that I just thought was really nifty here. Sorry, I think I'm skipping over one here, but let's just go ahead and cover this right now. This was Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal, who we very much enjoy and appreciate on this podcast. And her reporting has just been absolutely fantastic. Well, last week you linked to a story where she went into a high security prison and was interviewing somebody that has been accused or convicted of crimes of stealing iPhones and information from iPhones. And we've talked about this. So this kind of story builds on some of the other things that we've talked about here. But I will admit to you, my friend, last week I did not actually watch this video. This morning I watched this, and can I just say this is required watching for anybody with an iPhone. I like one of the lines in here that she says, the iPhone's biggest security loophole is you. It's us, right? It's the user. And it really is. And just going through, some of this information is not new. You and I have talked about some of the abilities that if a thief gets access to your iPhone passcode, that they could change your iCloud passcode, your Apple ID, and then it's gone. Everything is gone then at that point. But it's just, I think the social engineering component of this, Jeff, is what fascinated me. Just from his standpoint, the thief here is talking about how he would just go start making friends and start talking with folks and say, oh, let me put it, I'm a rapper. Let me give you my information, my details. I'll put it in your phone. Here, unlock your phone for me. And then they just do it right there in front of him. And he just can remember the 6 digits, and then he takes the phone, and then he's off to the races then at that point.
In fact, it's more than that, Brett.
Yeah.
What he would, and this was the most alarming part to me, is he said that most of the time he would just ask somebody to borrow their phone, and if you hold down the buttons on the left and the right and stuff, you can lock your phone, right? So he would lock their phone and say, "Oh, it happens to be locked. What's your passcode?" And they would just give it to him, and so he would just type in the number. It makes it easier for him to remember it. And then when he steals it from him as he leaves the bar, he knows the number. That was the most troubling part to me about this video, is how easy it was for people to just give away their numbers. Because once somebody has your phone and your passcode, they can delete every photo you have, not just from your phone, but from your entire iCloud account. So it's gone from your computer, it's gone from your iPad, it's gone from everything. They can, get into your bank account. They can take up, thousands and thousands of dollars. They can. It is literally almost unlimited chaos they can do to your life. You do not want your iPhone to be stolen by somebody that has your passcode. So yeah, if you didn't watch this video after I mentioned it on last week's podcast, you might want to watch it now.
Definitely.
It is important. And we should mention that the Wall Street Journal, if you subscribe to it, great. If you don't pay for the Wall Street Journal, you can read the articles for free if you subscribe to News Plus through Apple. And even if you don't subscribe to any of that stuff, anyone can watch the video for free. The video is at the very top of this Wall Street Journal article. Now, once you scroll down, you'll have to pay to read the article, but you can watch the video for free.
Oh, yeah. Just watching the video is enough. And I'll try to find the YouTube link on this as well and share it with everybody. I mean, it's 9 minutes of your life that I think is just going to help you and all of your loved ones. I mean, truly and honestly. I mean, even this gentleman was saying, he's like, yeah, I've stolen some Android phones, but he's like, the bigger money is in iPhones, and they know exactly where to go. Joanna Stern even asked him, like, oh yeah, you go into Venmo and PayPal. He's like, no, that's small money. He's like, I go immediately to the bank accounts. I go immediately to using the credit cards. I mean, it's just amazing. And then he goes and buys more Apple products to resell, right? I mean, you just got to watch it, folks. Everybody, seriously. And then you can thank us later for that. Where are you at segment? Speaking of, some of this on there could be folded right into that. Where is your phone? Anyway, this was a nice little angle, I thought, from where you. I think we have like 3 quick stories on this. How about roadside assistance? We've talked about using the iPhone and Apple satellite connection to basically get help when you need it. And most of the time we're talking about like emergency personnel, right? But what if you just need a flat tire to be replaced or to jump your battery? I thought this was really interesting that Verizon is getting on this as well as AAA, which of course everybody knows about.
Yeah, everybody knows about the AAA service. I did not know that. I guess I've never been a Verizon customer. I've used AT&T ever since the first iPhone came out. But Verizon has long offered a roadside assistance program to Verizon customers, and now that service is going to work with Apple satellite. So if you're in the middle of nowhere and you're a Verizon customer, if you already pay $5 a month, well, then now you can use the Verizon service, and that the service has different things that they pay for and different things that are added services. But even if you, just like AAA, even if you don't currently subscribe to the service, you can like pay per use. So you can say, I don't pay $5 a month for roadside assistance, but I want to use that Verizon program for this one time only because I've got a flat tire and I need somebody to bring me a new tire, even though I'm completely off the grid and everything else and only within satellite. So now you've got even more options. And I hope that we see even more of this, Brett. Every one of these services should be available. And that way, I mean, I didn't even know about this, but maybe you could compare prices. Like if I don't subscribe to either one of them and Verizon's going to charge me X to replace my tire and AAA would cost Y, I could pick the one that's more, if that makes more sense. I don't know. But so it's great to have more options. And I'm glad that Apple is not limiting its roadside assistance to only AAA.
And again, it's just the fact that, people might say, well, wait, what's the big deal? Like, I just call AAA if I need to. But what if you don't have cell service, right?
This is the whole point. That's the satellite.
That's the whole, exactly. That's the whole point of this. And I just love seeing that kind of wrapped into it. We've talked about the iPhone saving people when they fall, or they break a leg or something. How about saving you from carbon monoxide poisoning?
Yeah.
This was really a fascinating story. I think this out of Delaware. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. This woman, she's a student, and she is, must be a college student, and she suddenly feels herself like losing consciousness, which is one of the signs of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Right. Her vision was getting blurry. Yeah.
And vision blurry. That's one of the, and those two, and I think becoming nauseous. Those are the three typical signs of carbon monoxide poisoning. And so as she was collapsing onto her bed, fortunately, she didn't have anything. The only thing she had was her Apple Watch. So, if you press down what's the button called on the side of the Apple Watch? Not the digital crown, but the other one. If you hold down that button,
the side button,
the side button, that's not what it might be called. If you hold down the side button, you'll see call SOS, whatever. And so she did that to call 911 as she collapsed. And the next thing she knows, there's a firefighter on top of her. And sure enough, it was, as we're changing weather and stuff like that, it was getting cold.
Yeah.
The heater in her home apparently had some sort of a leak, which leaked carbon monoxide. And thank goodness the firefighters were there. So, I'm curious, if she hadn't collapsed in her bed, if she had just completely fallen on the floor, maybe fall detection, could have worked as well. But in this case, this is an example of not using fall detection. She had just enough consciousness before she collapsed to dial 911 through her watch. And thank goodness she did, because, she could have died. Seriously.
Right.
This is bad stuff.
I like that that's what you went to, is like, hey, would your watch have worked if you had fallen completely on the floor? Because my first thought after reading this was like, oh, I need to go check my carbon monoxide.
Yeah, and she admits she should have had one of those monitors in her house.
Right.
We all should, yeah.
Got to make sure. Okay, last little story here. Woo, a couple of more crash detection features saving people. And I liked how this is a story from Chance Miller in 9 to 5 Mac, where it's like the first responders are still a little upset sometimes because of all of the false calls or the false positives that they get, but most of them have agreed that that's all worth it, right? Mm-hmm. Because when they do find somebody that was in a real accident and they really needed help, that makes it all worthwhile. And anyway, this was, I think, from Tennessee, and the other one was Alabama or somewhere else, I think, on here. Mm-hmm. A couple of neat stories in this as well.
Yeah. And it's just anecdotal, but it's interesting. These are people that are really out there in the wild, and they say, yes, occasionally we get a false positive.
Right.
But like you said, Brett, that the number of times that it actually is something real, and that without this service, we just wouldn't have been able to help them. It definitely makes it worth it. So it's nice to see that Apple's crash detection and fall detection and SOS, all these things, satellite services, all these things are coming together. When you think of all these things we talked about at one time, none of which existed a few years ago, these Apple products are truly saving lives. Hopefully you and I and nobody listening needs them, but sure is comforting to know that you have access to them, and your loved ones that have Apple Watches and iPhones have access to them too.
Right. Didn't one of these here, I think the iPhone was thrown away from the car, right? As part of the wreck or something like that? Was it thrown out of the car? But still they were able to go to that location and be able to find it. Anyway, just really great stuff on all of that. It sounds like over this past weekend, Jeff, you and I could have probably watched the last season of Slow Horses together.
Oh, did you watch it?
My wife and I binged season 3 as well, because we could not stop watching it, Jeff. It was so good. Those characters are so fantastic. And what is it? Gary Oldman? He is so fantastic in this role. Even the music. There was a story. Did we link to this not too long ago?
We talked about it last week. Yeah, the Mick Jagger wrote the theme song.
Mick Jagger wrote the theme, and just that song. I usually will sometimes skip through the intros because I'm like, okay, I've seen it. But I won't do that one just because it fits so beautifully with the show. It just gets me in the mood. Anyway, just such a great season there. Slow Horses season 3. And then at the end, they talked about Slow Horses season 4. And I was even getting more excited there. Okay, but I'm glad that we got to both watch it. That was good.
So Apple filmed seasons 1 and 2 at the same time and then released them separately. They filmed seasons 3 and 4 at the same time. And so season 4 is already, wrapped and stuff like that. And it will presumably come out later on this year. And then Apple announced that they've picked up the show for a season 5, which this is the very first Apple TV Plus show to get season 5. Which makes sense because when you think about it, Apple TV came out in 2019, and here we are in the very beginning of 2024. So it hasn't quite been 5 years yet. So it's not surprising that we're just slowly getting to that point. I certainly hope that For All Mankind is another one that gets a season 5. But regardless, Slow Horses. And the thing about Slow Horses I like, and I'm sure you do too, is the episodes, I mean, aren't they much like 30, 40 minutes? I mean, they're not that long. So it's a really bingeable show. Like, you can watch an episode quickly, and then you're going to want to watch that next episode. I didn't get through the whole thing in one sitting. I got through it in 2 sittings, but
I think us too.
It is such a great show. Just so, and that Gary Oldman character, you almost hate him, and then in fact, I have questions. We may have to do this offline because I don't want to spoil it, but there's some things. Let me say it delicately.
Yes.
The way that he acts towards another character that we know is very important to him in the last episode. At first, I think this is harsh, but now I'm thinking it was actually calculated, and he does actually have. I don't want to give anything away, but
you're being very vague.
Talk about this, but there was just some. You know how you love a good show that you continue to think about it afterwards? I have continued to think about that last episode of season 3.
Guilty.
And I cannot wait to see how it all unfolds in season 4, which hopefully will be just a few months away. So
there's only 6 episodes. So I think we did 2 episodes the first night, and then it's like we couldn't stop thinking about it that next day, Jeff. And so we ended up watching all 4 episodes the next day. So that was so great.
Good. So good.
And then along those lines, a great little video you link to here called A Toast to 2023 from Apple TV Plus. As I was watching this, I just thought, this isn't a toast. This is just a series of profiles and hugs.
It is.
You have to watch the video to understand what I mean there.
I will admit, I know it's promotional. I know it's blah, 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 blah.
Right.
It almost brought a tear to my eye.
Oh, it was,
showed
I don't know if it was that good.
People. Just because some of those Ted Lasso things they showed, it's like, I remember how bittersweet it was when the series ended. And I love that show so much. So anyway, it's definitely worth watching the video. It's just like a minute or something like that.
I'll link that video for sure. In the know.
So
speaking of a toast to 2024, I had a great time with my family. All 4 of us, my kids had never been to New York City. Now, we didn't go for New Year's Eve. We weren't that crazy. But we landed there on New Year's Day, so January 1st. And we had a great time just walking around, seeing the Rockefeller Center and, the Empire State Building, all kinds of stuff like that. But, Jeff, one of the things that I've talked about before is walking around, going to like a restaurant or somewhere and hearing a song that they're playing over the audio. And I love Shazam. I always have. Well, in New York, of course, boy, there was such great music everywhere. And it's like we're waiting in line for a bagel. And I'm like, man, they're playing some kind of really great jazz. I think I know who it is, but I don't know for sure. So I've talked about this before because it's one of my favorite things. There's a couple of different ways to get into the Shazam app that will listen to the song, and then it'll tell me the song. And Jeff, I don't know about you, but over the years, I have seen Shazam get even better. Like every time I use it, I'm like, there's no way. There's other people talking. It's not that loud. I won't be able to hear it. And then there was a siren that goes off in the middle of it, but no, it finds it, and it still just fascinates me every single time now. Well, a couple of different ways. You can get to the Shazam app. You can just go into your phone and find the Shazam app. The other way that I was doing this over the last couple of years is I added it to my control center, so you can pull it down in your control center, and you can just tap it, and then it listens right there. But it's like I was doing this so often, Jeff, that it's like I hated to unlock the phone and go to the control center. So I'm like, hey, I wonder if they have a lock screen widget. And sure enough, they now do. In fact, this only came out. It looks like this is stories from August of 2023. So I think this is right after 17 came out, that you can now add Shazam as a lock screen widget. And I think I have it on every single one of my lock screens now. There's 2 little options. You can have just one little tiny square, which just opens the Shazam app directly and it starts listening. Or there's a little bit of a bigger one. You can have those lock screen widgets are either, I call them 1 square or they're 2 squares. And you can have a bit of a bigger one, which actually will show you, it'll launch this Shazam app as well, but it'll show you what like the last song that it recognized on this. So anyway, that's the thing that I just really enjoyed walking around New York, going into different restaurants and different places that we were in. I was like, what is that song? Plus, to me, it's just like, am I right? Am I thinking it's the right song? I just like kind of having the ability to do that. And it just continues to amaze me how good it is. And it just reminds me how much that Apple is improving this. The Apple acquired it in 2018. And what I love about it is that it will launch the song that it recognizes into Apple Music, but you can also launch it into Spotify. Like, they're still allowing you a little bit more of a custom component on this. And anyway, I was just enthralled doing that. The kids were just getting a little upset. Like, come on, Dad, we don't stand here and listen to the music. But I enjoyed it. So that's my tip. Add Shazam widget to your lock screen as a widget. Small one or a big one today?
The reason I love that tip is because Shazam truly is magical, like you say. It's incredible how often it works. But every time I launch Shazam, I want to launch it as quickly as possible, because that's by definition.
Exactly.
You're like, before the song ends, I want you to launch. So giving you even faster. Hey, it might be something you could attach to your action button as well, Brett. You might consider.
I was just thinking about that.
But Shazam launching as fast as possible is awesome. Okay, so here is my tip. My tip has to do with messages, and the reason for my tip is I've been encountering an issue over the last couple of months that sometimes my iPhone will show that I have no new messages, but my iPad will think that I do have a new message, or vice versa. They get out of sync. And I haven't figured out the solution to it yet, but in the process of thinking about it, I came across this post on Threads by Lauren Good, who's a writer for Wired magazine, and she said that, and again, I'm not sure it's going to fix the particular problem that I have, but it's actually a clever thing that I plan to use in the future. What she said is that if you ever are being told by your Messages app that you have an unread message and you can't figure out what it is, perhaps because you don't, whatever reason you don't know where it is, if you ask Siri on that device to read any unread messages, it will read to you whatever it thinks is unread. And I'm like, okay, that's clever. I'm glad to see that tip. I'm going to try that in the future. But then there's a reply to her post on Threads by John Gruber, who we were just talking about a few minutes ago during Fireball. And John says, this is a clever tip, and here's yet another one. And this one I thought I didn't even know about. So normally in your Messages app, if you open up your Messages app and you're looking just at the top level, at the very top left of the screen, it says edit, and you can tap that to have some edit functions. But if you want to change it, the way that you change it is if you go into your settings app. So get out of the message app, you go into the settings app, and then you go down to tap on messages, which is a little ways down there. And then when you're in messages, there's tons of things you can change. So you scroll all the way to the bottom, and at the very bottom, it's not the very bottom, it's like third from the bottom. There's something called message filtering. If you tap, and then underneath message filtering, if you tap on that, you'll see some options. There's a thing to turn on called filter unknown senders. Turn that on. Now, the reason you want to turn that on is it now changes the way that your Messages app operates. If you go back to your Messages app, at the top left, instead of seeing the edit button, you'll now see a new button called filters. It says
filters.
And if you tap on filters, you'll go back one level, just like when you're in your mail app, you can go back one level. And you can say, I either want to see all messages, I just want to see messages from people that are known senders. So in other words, those little they may not be spam. They may just be like confirmation codes from companies. I don't want those to show up. You can see only unknown senders, or you can see unread messages. And then you can also see recently deleted if you're trying to find something that you deleted. And so I had no idea that you could filter messages this way. And so whether you're using it for what I originally started talking about, which is unread messages, or you're using it because you just want to focus on the people that you know or the people that you don't know, or, this is just a useful tool to go. You're not going to use it all the time, but I think and again, you don't lose anything, because now that it says filters at the top left of my screen, things that used to be under the edit screen, there's a new button at the top of the screen. It's a circle with 3 dots in it. It wasn't there before.
I see that.
But if you tap on the circle with 3 dots, you'll now see some of those same things that were previously under the edit. Messages. So you haven't lost any features. It's just added something to your Messages app that you might find useful one day. Now, I hope that this is a solution, or I hope that this leads to a solution for the problem that I originally encountered of it's not syncing.
Okay.
But even if it doesn't, these are useful. I'm so thrilled that I now know about this new way to have additional functionality in the Messages app. So that's my tip of the week. And again, I didn't come up. I thank Lauren Good and John Gruber for sharing this information on Threads that I am now sharing with everybody else.
Okay, but I'm going to give you credit too, Jeff. That's what a way to bang start the new year. That is fantastic. I am so thrilled with that because I typically don't have any unreads on there, but every once in a while I'll leave one, just like I'll leave an unread email, right? And because I'm going to go back to it. This just jumps me. I have 4 unreads right now, and I go into the filter, and all I see are the 4 unreads instead of having to scroll through and find it. I am so happy. Wow. Happy New Year. That's great, Jeff. Thanks again. All right, good. It's great to start 2024. Happy to be doing this, continuing to do this. And thank you all for listening to us and for starting off the new year with us. And Jeff, we'll talk to you next week.
Happy New Year, Brett, and goodbye, everybody.